The Woman in the Dunes is a novel by the Japanese writer Kobo Abe, published in 1962. It won the 1962 Yomori Prize for Literature, and an English translation and film adaptation appeared in 1964. In 1955, Junpei Niki, a schoolteacher from Tokyo, visited a fishing village to collect insects. After missing the last bus, he is led by villagers in an act of apparent hospitality to a house in the dunes that can be reached only by a rope ladder. The next morning, the ladder is gone, and he finds himself to be expected to keep the house clear of sand with the woman living there, with whom he is also to produce children. If he was ever to stop clearing away the sand from the hole he is in, he would die as the sand flooded in. He eventually gives up trying to escape when he comes to realize that returning to his old life would give him no more liberty. After 7 years, he's proclaimed officially dead. With illustrations by Maki Abe and an introduction by David Mitchell, The Woman in the Dunes is what many people would consider a quote-unquote Kafkaesque nightmare. Kobo Abe himself was born in 1924 in Tokyo and spent a lot of his early life moving around the country. His mother was born in Hokkaido, quite far from Tokyo, which resulted in Kobo Abe not really having a hometown in the traditional sense. He even has got on record in an interview stating that his troubles with making long-term friends as a kid, and this is what I believe is the emotion and the feeling that is reflected in this novel the most. The ties between Abe's apparent isolation as a child and the kidnapping of the character Junpei Niki in this book are quite prevalent throughout. He has used the sand ditch as a representation of his isolation as a child and has picked this specifically so that it can relate to a more adult audience. Niki Junpei represents Abe's thoughts and feelings as a child, constantly trying to escape and make plans to get away from his cage of isolation, but ultimately having to give up and become content with the struggles of his life. This message that the book portrays to the reader is what I believe led to the book's success, as although Kobo Abe has written it to be very personal to himself, he has left the inferences that can be made from the story open enough for a good amount of interpretation by the reader. The abstract tone and atmosphere of the book owes itself to Abe's perception of film and media in general. After the production of the film for The Woman in the Dunes in 1964, Abe criticized the studio he was working with at the time for trying too hard to present his work in a limited medium such as screenplay at the time. After this, Abe opened his own theatre studio that focused heavily on portraying the more abstract arts to an audience. Many parts of The Woman in the Dunes use high-level language and discuss quite complex anatomical topics with the reader, especially during the section where her plans on the most effective way of digging out of the ditch with one shovel. I believe that this is due to Kobo Abe's experience with medical science. He spent a fair chunk of his life studying medical sciences and achieved a medical degree soon after. This, I believe, influenced the book's terminology heavily. The book overall achieves its goal of expressing isolation, empathy, and grief in a masterful work of art packed full of metaphorical plot lines and deep embedded relations to Kobo Abe's life up until the point of writing the novel.